We all mourn what has become of the Intercontinental title. Yeah, wrestlers like The Miz try and make it mean something, but without the right protection and booking, it's meaningless. Take 2018's Elimination Chamber. The awesome one was the IC champ, and yet he was in the chamber trying to win that, rather than defending his gold. That instantly puts it in second place. There was a time, however, where it meant almost as much as the WWE title and was constantly referred to as the workers' belt. In short, that meant if you were damn good in the ring, you'd probably find yourself wearing the Intercontinental title around your waist. And because of that, it usually resulted in incredible matches as well, because again, this was the "you're a really good wrestler" championship. It was almost your duty to deliver inside the squared circle, and that has happened time and time again. I'm Simon from WhatCulture, and this is the 10 best WWE Intercontinental title matches ever. Number 10, Shawn Michaels vs Razor Ramon at SummerSlam 1995. Things were tough for Shawn and Razor at the 1995 SummerSlam. For one, we all instantly wanted them to top the classic they had at WrestleMania 10, and two, if they were going to do that, it would have to be without using the ladder as a direct weapon. Vince McMahon decided to forbid that, probably with advertisers in mind. It was a twist that would rear its head again at No Mercy 2008 when HBK took on Chris Jericho, and much like then, it was a success here as both men decided to work around that rather than let it get in the way. If nothing else, they were both babyfaces, so it would make sense for them not to use it as a tool of death. This resulted in Michaels and Razor putting on a smarter match than their previous epic because of what they'd learned. Michaels missed the splash he gracefully landed a year earlier. Razor dodged a brutal baseball slide while Shawn remained acutely aware of his ring positioning so not to find himself out of sorts come the climax. Though it's marred slightly by Michaels' failed attempt to rescue the belt with a dramatic leap, this is otherwise completely flawless. Number 9, The Miz vs Dolph Ziggler at No Mercy 2016. Isn't it weird that WWE seems to always hit serious highs when they revert to simple storytelling, and yet they don't do that all the time? It is, isn't it? And another example of that comes in 2016 when The Miz and Dolph Ziggler clashed over the IC title. In short, Miz loved the fact that Ziggler was in a slump and took every opportunity to tell him all about it. At the same time, however, Dolph was aware that he wasn't on top form too, so he decided to put it all on the line. He would challenge Miz for his prized possession, and if he couldn't win it, he'd retire. Perfect! One can understand that. As well as this, a combo of Miz's incredible heel work and Dolph finding a way to completely get fans to buy in meant this all felt real, and the roar of emotion greeting Ziggler's win was up there with one of the best. It was a feel-good moment and one we could all get behind and understand, until WWE undid all their hard work in the weeks that followed. It is a great setup though, and a fine match to boot. The exact one to attack you want with such feuds. Number 8, Chris Jericho vs Rey Mysterio at the Bash 2009. Before we get into this one, I had completely forgotten that WWE had decided to use the term The Bash for a pay-per-view. It's worse than Great Balls of Fire. Anyway, it's fair to say that around this time period, WWE was stuttering a little bit, or at least in a state of flux. They were trying to find a new direction and hadn't at all. So what better way to hide all this than going back to two premier workers? Exactly. Proving themselves as heroes, Rey Mysterio and Chris Jericho's feud over the IC title resulted in some truly breathtaking matches that blew pretty much everything else out the water in WWE in 2009. And there were so many good elements to it, including Y2J swiping Mysterio's mask off his head during a 619 attempt that ultimately cost Rey his Intercontinental title gold. The rematch was subsequently booked as a title versus mask affair, affording both performers a deserved emotional crutch to aid them through a war of a fight. Easily the best match of the pay-per-view. The pair elevated themselves and the belt while also helping their own magnificent finish from before to bluff and reward the audience. Jericho once more went after Mysterio's mask, but Rey had learned his lesson. How? By having a second identical one underneath that completely surprised Jericho enough that Rey could regain his title. This was wonderful. Number 7, Randy Savage vs Ricky Steamboat at WrestleMania 3. The match that stole the show, even with the iconic Hogan vs Andre headlining the thing. Savage and Steamboat's classic clash at WrestleMania 3 is a part of wrestling lore these days. If you call yourself a fan and haven't seen it, well, you're still a fan. I never understood that argument, but go and watch it now anyway, because you'll enjoy it. The real high point is when you learn that all this was pre-planned beforehand, which is exactly how the Macho Man liked it. You can call this a clinic if you like, but it's certainly one that was designed to be that way. That kind of makes it even better depending what your take on pro wrestling is. Randy Savage's wrestling mind was second to none. Showcasing the art form as much as possible, it's the transitions and smoothness of the whole thing that will wow you. This is two artists and a canvas, and even today, over 30 years on, it hasn't aged too much. Even if you think it has, put yourself in their shoes. They were ahead of the game and then some. It ended when Super Babyface Steamboat wrapped up Randy for the win with a small package, and it was of such quality, it pretty much pushed the Macho Man towards his face turn later in the year. Number 6, Shawn Michaels vs Marty Jannetty at Raw on the 17th of May 1993. That was quite the mouthful, wasn't it? But it's true! Way back in 1993, the former tag team partners went at it for the IC title, and it was fantastic, as was the whole show itself. As well as this, you also get the now legendary 1-2-3 Kid victory over Razor Ramon. Even without that, seeing Jannetty get a smidgen of revenge after being thrown through a window is wonderful. We all know where the story goes after that, but still, here, everything was rosy. Edgy, quick and desperate, the match summed both participants up magnificently. Shawn had shone since the Rockers split, but fought from a position of unpreparedness and panic. It was the same for Marty, even if this would be his last hurrah, really. He was already on second chance territory, never really found himself again. This was his night, however, and even claiming the title with Mr. Perfect's help didn't take away from that because the fans were entirely bought in. They knew what was right and saw justice served in front of their eyes. Then it's all downhill, but that's the beauty of lists. We're not focusing on that, just on one special night. Number 5, Bret Hart vs the British Bulldog at SummerSlam 1992. SummerSlam 92 is notable for many reasons. Firstly, yes, it was held over here in the UK at Wembley Stadium, but it was also the first ever WWE pay-per-view without one Hulk Hogan. That's huge when you remember how important he had been for years within the Fed. It still had the likes of Randy Savage, the Ultimate Warrior, and Ric Flair, but that was almost irrelevant given the location. This was Davey Boy Smith night, which is why the IC title match against Bret Hart was thrown right into the main event. It's an even greater spectacle in later years when watched after reading the Hitman's book, because according to Hart, a nervous Davey Boy Smith had spent the week beforehand masking his insecurities by doing a lot of drugs. Revealing his situation as the pair locked up, Mr. Hitman took hold of his brother-in-law and the match to craft a 25-minute epic. Having helped Smith through each individual step in front of the biggest crowd the two would ever perform in front of, Hart understandably considered it his favourite match ever. In every conceivable manner, the excellence of execution was yet again the hard-working, consummate pro. Number 4, The Rock vs Triple H at SummerSlam 1998. Hilariously, this was meant to be the night which took Triple H to the next level, and while it certainly achieved that, I think in hindsight it was more about The Rock proving what he was capable of. Just look where he is now. Jeez. Either way, at SummerSlam 1998 in front of an MSG crowd, Triple H and The Rock crafted something excellent here that really did tell everyone that both had bigger futures. Even in defeat, The Rock couldn't have looked more poised to break out, as he was becoming too cool to be constantly booed. When someone makes you laugh in spite of yourself, the writing is already on the wall. Meshing together magnificently as they had before and would many times going forward, the pair also decided to just smash each other with the ladder as the rules of the Attitude Era dictated they should. Triple H did indeed win on the night and took the IC belt home with him for good measure, but this really is one of those bouts where no one loses, as each performer got so much from the encounter. It was a landmark for them both. Number 3, Jeff Jarrett vs Shawn Michaels at In Your House 2. Do you need some evidence that Jeff Jarrett does have the credentials to be in the Hall of Fame? No problem. That's what I'm here for, and at In Your House 2, when he took on Shawn Michaels, there is proof that he didn't make it to where he was by accident. I mean, I'm sure his dad helped, but still. Neither here nor there. It was an interesting time in the world of WWE too, especially where Shawn Michaels was concerned. While an absolute hero in the ring, outside of it he was a nightmare, annoying the entire locker room on a daily basis, or so it would seem. However, because he was so talented, he was lighting the place up, including here against one Double J. A stunning clash of Jeff's Memphis magic and Shawn's dynamic flair. Jarrett whooped HBK's ass from pillar to post as Michaels sold his ass off. It was so easy to buy in because it seemed legit. Fans were raging at Jeff and they were desperate for HBK's comeback. There was some nonsense with the roadie that allowed Michaels to win. That didn't take away from the quality here, and it's still quality today. Number 2, Randy Orton vs Cactus Jack at Backlash 2004. Often neglected in debating classic IC scrapes due to the feud centering around personal hatred rather than a chase for the championship, Randy Orton's successful defense of his belt against Cactus Jack is a genuine turning point for the master of the RKO. Raised him up to a whole other level. Orton had hoofed Foley down the staircase, spat in his face, and even pinned him at WrestleMania to build to this battle, so he was every bit the arrogant asshole he should have been, but naturally, that just made him easier to hate. Fought under hardcore rules, Jack initially dragged Orton kicking and screaming out of his comfort zone, but this was all just one big setup, as eventually Randy went nuts too, and the brutality rained down from the ceiling. This all flailed in comparison as to what was to come though, as Orton took a horrendous back bump into a load of thumbtacks. It's horrific. He visibly shook because of the pain, with the camera wisely lingering on his shredded back. Orton would go on to win after an RKO into a baseball bat, and this really is something else. It's mad. Number 1, Mr. Perfect versus Bret Hart at SummerSlam 1991. Bret Hart is great. Mr. Perfect is great. So it came as no surprise that when they clashed at SummerSlam 1991, the overwhelming feeling afterwards was that we had seen something great. It's littered with tiny nuances as well, not least that this was the Hitman's first ever solo title win. So much to enjoy here. Perfect gave everything to Bret too. His body, racked with pain and injury, was battered from pillar to post as the torch was passed with far more bravado than it had been in years. There was no ego here. This was about making someone new. Perfect even left behind his dignity as he begged constantly for mercy from his opponent, and all of this just somehow added to how awesome it all was. It's also a time where the IC title felt like a massive deal. Perfect didn't want to lose it and Bret was desperate to win it, and when he did to a monster reaction, it was the start of the Hitman's journey to the world title the following year. You can say what you want about the secondary championship, but on this night, it did everything it was meant to do, and then some.
Gosh, can you believe that person said that about that particular video on that entry? I sure can't. But you should like, share and subscribe below anyway. And also, the people who made this video, they're right here. Go follow them and give them some love. Also, there's more content, probably above my head. Check it out. Or don't. 50-50.